Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nevada Women's Film Festival Program 7 Live Q&A. My name is Veronica Castillo, and I will be your tech. Running behind the scenes, I also have my partner, Jemsen Yumico Bollozos, as our tech producer as well. We're both co-founders of Eccentric Artists, working as the festival's executive committee this year. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our moderator for today. Over the past decade, Michelle Patrick has worked at the intersections of theater, dance, film, arts programming, and public speaking. Her work currently focuses on nonprofit arts organizations, cultural institutions, and individual artists. Originally from Queens, New York, she's also a facilitator, voiceover artist, and has a varied background as an arts administrator that includes the Nevada Arts Council, City of Las Vegas, Denver Center of Performing Arts, and the Sundance Film Festival. So again, thank you, Michelle, and I'd love for you to start this Q&A.
Thank you so much, Veronica, for that awesome introduction. Welcome everybody once again to Program 7. I am so excited today because we are being joined with the director, screenwriter, and certain cast members from, one moment. So excited to have you here. I just want to introduce everyone that is on the panel. Deirdre O'Connor, who is the director. Hey, Deirdre. Also screenwriter Mindy Elliott. And then also we're being joined by Sioux Madden and Sal Rendino. Did I say that right, Sal?
Mindy is our editor.
Oh, I'm so sorry, editor. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Screenwriter and director.
Okay, I apologize, my bad. But before we dive in, I really had to say that I had a little bit of apprehension about moderating this because after I watched your film, I just knew at some point during this panel that I was just gonna break out in tears because I was crying by the end of it. So it was definitely so funny, so endearing, but there were certainly a lot of poignant moments that really hit home. So I wanted to also just share some of my favorite quotes from this film. And Danny Aiello, I mean, hello, his delivery was what really made a lot of these comments funny, like, you're Democrats? What does organic mean? I have no idea, right? Like, I have no idea myself, but the line that really struck with me, and Deirdre, I'm gonna start this with you, was sometimes you keep quiet to keep the peace. And I'm wondering your thoughts, is that really the rule of thumb for women? And is that the rule of thumb for women in filmmaking?
Well, it's certainly an interesting perspective for film and filmmaking and probably almost any business or industry. My approach to it was for family. And, you know, I'm from a big family, a very strict Irish Catholic, fairly conservative family. And I know many people with similar backgrounds, and we all get along really well, although we all think and feel very differently about a lot of different topics. And it really was that approach, but I think it is very applicable to what women have been subjected to in any industry, and in particular in film. When you look at how women are not very well represented behind the camera, in the business room, you know, business decisions. It's, as we all know, changing in a lot of ways for a lot of different people, but we still have a long way to go. And I don't think women should be quiet to keep the peace when it comes to business, but sometimes in family, it's a really good way to go. So I separate the two out. So that's my take on it.
Thank you for that. I also, it appeared as though a lot of the female protagonists in the story were doing just that, right? If I just keep the peace, I don't have to talk about my identity or reveal certain things. If I keep the peace, I don't want to have to talk about how fearful I am about seeing my father age and the anticipation that comes from. Do we do more harm by protecting others rather than protecting ourselves?
I think yes, because there is a line, because in my family, there were certain caretakers and certain people who just couldn't be there to do it, and certain people, maybe who could have done more. And there is a line at the shrine where Caroline's character, his daughter that he's living with, says, do I hide from life? And she goes through and explains, when I was in my 20s, I got pregnant and dropped out of my PhD program. And then I dropped out again later on to help care for mom. And then I'm caring for dad. Those were situations, she did have a choice, and she chose to sacrifice and keep quiet. And maybe it doesn't need to be all sacrifice. And it's Sue Madden's character, when they're in the backyard, although she's the annoying sister-in-law, she said, it's your dad's life, yes, but it's your life too. And I think sometimes people do hide behind the caretaker role and say, well, I can't do that. I have to care for my parents. And you can't be quiet all the time. It doesn't work. So
thank you for that. Sue, do you want to talk a little bit about your character and what you were drawn to the most about your character? Like, if you met her, would you be friends with her? What kind of discussion would you have with her?
I think Theresa would be really fun to go out and have some drinks with. I don't know if I'd be friends with her. We actually are similar in a lot of ways. I think Theresa, her focus is most definitely her immediate family. To a fault, like her kids are her twins, their twins are like supposed to be 20 years old or something, and she's still treating them like they're 12. So she's taken it a little far. But I mean, for me, and this is actually apropos of what you were just talking about, like keeping quiet, keeping the peace, not like communicating what you really want and becoming the caretaker. Like when I had kids, I kind of dropped out. I was mostly a theater person, but I kind of dropped out. Like I even had friends contact me, especially when Facebook got popular and it was easy to find people. Like, where did you go? You like dropped off the face of the planet. And I was like, well, I had two kids. And for a long time, I had that similar feelings to what Caroline has, like this, I wanted to do what I did, like take care of the kids, but also I had this nagging, like, but I also want to be acting. And I just literally, I couldn't figure out how to do both at the same time. Like small multitasking, make dinner, do all these other little things, that was possible, but large multitasking, be the mom, be the actor, like that to me, like I could not figure that out. And it took a long time for me to come to peace with it and realize I actually did make a decision, because it felt a little out of my hands at first for years. Then I realized, no, I made a decision. It was just a really hard one. And it took me a while to come to peace with it, which has nothing to do with Theresa. I've gone off on a tangent, but I think Theresa's focus is her family, and I can identify with that. However, although I think she does talk back to Rick sometimes, especially in private, I am less passive than Theresa is, I think.
And a lot smarter.
But she's got her own brand of wisdom.
I agree.
Especially after a drink or two.
Sal, I wanted to move it over to you. Your character demonstrated some antagonistic behavior. Do you find that that's still a given in the industry in terms of how things are shifting and how things are changing? I mean, did you find any similarities between that role and what's happening now in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think people justify their decisions based on their needs, right? I mean, I I wouldn't say Rick's behavior was antagonistic being in the story myself, right? I would say, well, I was just doing what was needed at the time to take care of what I needed to take care of. And, you know, looking from the outside, a lot of people would say, yeah, but it's very self-centered, the way I behave, the way I speak, and the way I respond to things. But that's kind of the actor's job, right? Not to judge that stuff and to be defensive of your choices, maybe, as Sue said, to a fault, right? So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question about how it relates to the industry. Yeah, I didn't see the evil. I saw the, you know, the human fault. Nobody's perfect, right? But I did my best, right? That was my excuse. I did my best, and you know, some other people wouldn't do as good as me, and some other people in our family weren't around like I was, you know.
So just to piggyback on that, you know, sometimes when we're talking about showing vulnerability, especially when we are looking at a parent who is aging or ailing, we generally don't tend to give space to talk about what that looks and that feels like. So I think, and I totally agree with you as far as, yeah, I think I chose that wrong word, but I think maybe I was looking for more of a vulnerability, right? Just in terms of this conversation and the subject matter. Do you think that there is a lack of that right now, I guess, in the industry when we are talking about Me Too and we're talking about inequity in the industry?
Oh, I think there's a definite lack of representation. Yeah. I think we're on the right track, but as a society, we've gone like a roller coaster down to a peak a few years ago with a recognizable lack of empathy. But I think that's what artists bring generally is empathy, right? We try to kind of expose life and hold a mirror up to people and say, this is what I see in me, and it might relate to you. And let's get together on things and try to make things better. I think that's the great value of art, right? To kind of spread empathy and togetherness. You know, we're humans. We have a lot more in common than we have different. So I think that's the bottom line with why we do what we do.
And it is a safe space. So my bigger question to the group is, why is it that art seems to be that place where we can talk about loss and we can talk about reflection and we can talk about grieving? Because it seems like, right, when you're talking about, you know, I'm sad today or I'm grieving, right, you tend to get this deer in the headlight look, right, of what is that? But for whatever reason, people feel like this is a safe space and artists create that. Does anyone want to expand or just talk about why that is and why we can't seem to push the envelope in other areas of our culture and society?
Well, I would like to start in terms of the conservative Irish Catholic culture. You're brought up in a way that you don't express things directly. It does have a negative impact, and keeping the peace, as I said, is not always the best way to go. With my own family, we have changed to a degree, but not in leaps and bounds like I wish we could have. And I tried to express that in the film. There was a scene where the granddaughter, the one who's pregnant, comes to visit. And the very first time we did the scene, she came, Sasha is the actress's name, Sasha Georgette, came running in and she kisses Joe, Danny's character, hello. And they just naturally said, oh, I love you. And I said, okay, I want to do it again, but don't say I love you. Because I know so many people, including my family, we don't say it. We show it, And that's a great thing, but we don't say it. And even when Fran's character on the couch with Joe, when she says, we couldn't have asked for a better dad, but you're a pain in the ass. And that would have been the moment for him to say, I love you, but I did not want that said. And he makes a joke, but they hug. And it is a really intimate moment that I love. And he puts his arm around her. But I said, I don't want you to say it. If you know, there were some strains filming with lines, but that was one line I wanted to be true to. But I wanted to, you know, I wanted to show it because it is there, and I grew up with it. We just don't say it. So I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry, but but.
Mindy, I just wanted to ask you, just in terms of editing, there was also a shot, and forgive me, I can't remember the character's name, where she's jogging just in between, and it seems like it's just by the bay, right? And all of these things are happening, right? All of the to-do lists and things that are happening. And it was just a beautiful shot, right? To just have her just taking a moment and taking in that beautiful scenery that you had captured. Just kind of walk me through your process in terms of like each scene and each moment, because there were some really poignant moments that I can tell that you really thought about.
That scene in particular, the character is Caroline,
That's
the
right.
daughter, right? The caretaker daughter. And first of all, it starts on the page with Deirdre's writing. Of course, it's articulated beautifully in the script. And then it's beautifully shot and performed. So that makes my job easier. But that particular sequence of shots, I think is particularly important because we are outside and there's context. So often in dialogue scenes when we're in somebody's house, it's all about the, you know, the repartee between the characters and making a certain, you know, a verbal point. But there we are, there are words, but they're in her mind, and it's a purely cinematic moment. You know, we get so much from when we're wide and we find her lonely, small in the frame in a bigger world, and enjoying some time away, you know, from her immediate duties. And then we, on the closer shot, when, you know, the voices are in her head, and then when Dad calls, we get to be with her, you know, looking through her eyes. But I think the most important thing is that it gives you a little character portrait in the context of a bigger world. And it's cinema, so we have to have beautiful things to look at. I think we would be remiss in not taking advantage of showing people someplace they would never see otherwise. So yeah. That's it.
That was such a beautiful, beautiful moment. Thank you.
It is.
I wanted to also just talk to Deirdre about your casting process. Did you have, I don't want to say anyone specifically in mind, but how do you generally go about envisioning actors or envisioning people for your filmmaking?
This is my first feature film. And actually, I did a couple of little mini short narratives with friends and family. So it was really my first attempt at casting, because so many of the lines and characteristics that I was going for were people from my family or people that I knew. Those voices were in my head as I was writing. I didn't necessarily have a vision of what they looked like. And in terms of casting, it boiled down to they had to fit, you know, realistically an age bracket. And because if they were going to be family, they had to somewhat look a little bit, look a little bit alike. And it was kind of funny with Sioux. As I say, Sioux was one of the first people cast. We worked together many years ago, and I never forgot her. But she kind of looks like the sisters. So So Sal's character kind of married his sister, which happens a lot, I think. But that was kind of accidental. But for Danny's character, Joe, it was really, I was hoping to get a true blue New Yorker, and he was. You know, we had a short list, and somebody who could actually sing. And I had to rewrite it a little bit because originally the character was Irish American, and Danny did not look Irish. So I made him half and half. And, you know, it didn't take a lot of rewriting. And the other characters, in terms of casting, it was like you described the story before. It made you laugh and it made you cry.
Mhm.
And that's not easy to do. A lot of times actors, I think, are really good one way or the other. And every single one, these wonderful actors were really gifted in both areas. And that was what we looked for. And when we gave the sides to read, we gave them a funny part and you know, a more emotional, sad part to read, and lines, I should say. And that's how we decided. Because some people were really good, you know, at pulling at our heartstrings, and some people were really funny, but we went for the people who could do both.
Yeah, and to your point, it is not an easy thing to do. So again, kudos to you and the cast, and Mindy. I mean, really to the entire production team. It was really a joy to watch. I just have a couple of other questions. So, and this is really for everyone as far as coming back from the pandemic. I mean, I know that we're still tethering, right? But what are some of the things that you see shifting? This kind of is in conjunction with one of the questions that I had asked earlier. What do you see shifting? Is it just, are we coming back into business as usual? Or do you see some things actually shifting in terms of accessibility to young filmmakers, to female filmmakers, or just how we storytell?
I'm going to throw it out to the other three because I am really, when they say independent filmmaker, I'm really independent. I feel completely on the outside. Really? But, well, I am a community college professor by day. And this—
You're a filmmaker. You're a filmmaker.
No, I'm a filmmaker, but we made this film on our own terms. It was my own money. Not that, and that makes it sound like we have so much money. We do not. We filmed, if you look at the background behind, we filmed in my home. We filmed at the high school where I taught 30 years ago for the talent show scene. So I wanted to write a screenplay that I knew we could film, and that's what we did. And so many people helped with bringing in, you know, it was Caroline's character, Adria Tenner, who brought us to Mindy, and Mindy brought us to Tamara Johnson, who was our sound mixer. It was like that for me. And, you know, of course, I want to continue doing this. It worked out really well. But I really am an outsider. And I think the other three esteemed members of the panel would have more insight than I would. So I'll stop talking.
Yes.
I don't have much insight at all. I am also an outsider, but I have a feeling that there will be more care taken on set in terms of health and safety. Because of coming out of the pandemic, but also pre-pandemic. I can't remember the title of the job, but there's the like the intimacy director now on set, which had started, which is a different, you know, category, but I think that kind of goes into health and safety and care. And I just think there's going to be more attention everywhere, theater and film, paid to the health, safety, mental well-being of the people that you're working with coming out of this. That's just a guess.
That's a good one. That's a good one to have. Sal?
No, that's definitely true. I mean, you saw, as Sue said, pre-pandemic, this kind of wave of attention duly paid to the comfort of actors, especially actresses on set, because for 100 years now, it's just been yeah. We'll talk about it when we shoot, right? In the script, it seems kind of tenuous and maybe scary, and the actress might have reservations, and they might want to put in their contract, well, I'm not going to do XYZ, and the director and producer, yeah, we'll talk about it on set. We'll talk about it then, which is a recipe for disaster for the artist, which is not a good menu for good creativity, right? So in the last couple of years, these intimacy coordinators have been hired, and the God bless SAG-AFTRA, the union, who have gotten really behind paying attention to this stuff because it's so important, and I think that's going to carry over, probably by necessity, because of the pandemic. As Sue said, we're now paying attention to details that we hadn't had to before. And I fear we're going to get a little premature in this and try to open quicker than we should. It seems to be happening already. And we have these variants making these, inroads, which are scary. So hopefully we won't have to pay the price of being a little too energetically optimistic about reopening. But I think it's a good sign that we've started the process of being attentive to details that weren't really paid attention to in the past.
Thank you.
I would add that they clearly shot pre-pandemic, and I really got into the meat of post-production and editing as the pandemic was really gaining traction. And it forced me as an editor, I spend so much time by myself anyway in a dark room, and sometimes I go to a dark room and sit with other people, and sometimes I work at home, but you always get to the point in a project where you want your collaborator with you in the room, just to have that conversation in real time and work on specifics. So I think the whole pandemic process made me realize what I took for granted, and that would be it, the intimacy of the collaboration, and then what I could do without. What I did manage to we managed to make a film, during the pandemic without having, a lot of bells and whistles around us. I also think that, and this harkens back a little bit to your earlier question about what is it about art? I think the pandemic has proved to be, necessity is the mother of invention, and all kinds of new formats or approaches to storytelling, both technically and creatively, are coming out of this. And I think because we just went through something pretty traumatic, story is as old as time, and it's a safe place to have conversations about that when we sit down and tell a story to our children. It starts there. And we continue to love it throughout life. And I think the experiences of the past year and a half, 2 years will inform storytelling in a beautiful way, and filmmaking especially.
Thank you, Mindy. And I do have a question for you. What advice would you give a young woman who was interested in becoming an editor? What would you tell her or to expect? Or because we tend to not hear about a lot of women in this particular role or position. So any advice for anyone that's watching right now?
It's interesting because I think you're absolutely right. We are underrepresented. First of all, I don't think a lot of people know that the particular creative role as editor exists or what they do. So I'm particularly grateful to be included in this conversation. Women have been editors for a long time in Hollywood, but it primarily because they work behind the scenes, right? And although it's creative, it looks like a housekeeping kind of job or bookkeeping kind of job, that kind of a thing. But I think the most important thing is if somebody already knows that they're interested in becoming an editor, would be to reach out to the editors, whether they be men or women, of films that they appreciate. And editors love to talk to people, so they most likely will get a response. And I think the most important thing, and this goes for any pursuit, is that I speak for myself, but I think I speak for many women too. We are not used to asking for what we want or for putting it out there, like, I would like to achieve this. And I say, just be bold and say that that's what you want to achieve. I want to be an editor, and reach out to people who are doing it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So my last question, and this is for everyone on the table. What is the future of independent filmmaking, right? Because right now it seems like Marvel, all of these storied, action-packed features seem to be the hot ticket, and everyone's faces, I'm seeing things happen like, right? But what do we have to do to keep independent filmmaking afloat and making sure that people know that we got to keep this alive? We got to keep these perspectives and these points of storytelling to the table.
I think that the pandemic has helped us in this regard, that everyone, even older people who maybe would not have been into streaming, have discovered streaming. And I think the big budgets, the cape movies, as I call them.
I like that.
Look, my company, Little Red Purse Productions, is superheroes without capes. And I want to write and create stories and then produce films for those older than the cape movies. Not that there's anything wrong with them.
Right.
It's not what I seek out. And I think that streaming platforms are going to evolve. We're going to look back at this time and say, this was the turning point. And I think we're in a really good place for independent film, because the platforms now are not only there and expanding, but they are discovered, and people have learned who maybe wouldn't have forced themselves to learn. So I think it's only going to get better.
Awesome. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, the digital age has opened it up to everybody, right? And there will always be room for good stories. There's always a thirst and a hunger for good stories. And if you make a good story well, it's going to find an audience. I mean, look at Nomadland. Sure, it had stars and it had a budget, but it was an independent film that could have died really quickly. But it was made really well and it had passion behind it. And if you have those things, you're going to find an audience. I mean, when I started in the late 80s, it was all like real film, and it took so much budget to just get the resources to start your first day of filming. Now it's all digital and it's a lot easier and more accessible to people. So that opens it up, but it's like Craigslist. You got to wade through a lot of crap because everybody can do it, right? But the good side of that coin is that there's a lot of people who are passionate about telling stories, and they'll get their stuff made. And it's a great time.
Yes, it is. Sue?
Just fund Deirdre's next film, and then you'll get this new independent thing. I don't know, but one thought I had regarding an earlier question about like why is art the place where we can talk about the hard things? I think part of it is that we're, first of all, artists are given a pass in a way because we're the sensitive ones. We have to let it out, but also we're speaking somebody else's words. And so I feel like as like an audience watches a film and then sees the actor saying these heartfelt things or saying these truths that you identify with, but you know it's an actor. So there's like a slight detachment, which I think is what makes it more accessible, because it's not like you're not watching somebody have their own therapy session. A writer wrote the words, an actor is speaking the words, a filmmaker filmed the words, or you're sitting in an audience in a theater. And so, okay, so in other words, catharsis. I'm realizing this as I say it. Aristotle thought of this a long time ago. But I think that's what it is.
Catharsis.
It's like, right, that's catharsis, isn't it? Basically. Yeah, but it's allowed, right? It's allowed. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And somebody else is saying these things that I'm feeling, and we're speaking somebody else's words as the audience is listening. And it's sort of this is like unspoken safe space, whether you're in the movie theater or the live theater. That's all.
And you're asking how do we keep it alive? You guys are doing it. Thank God for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You're providing us an opportunity, a avenue to kind of express ourselves. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, this is everything. To just be able to be a vehicle, right, of support. That's why we do what we do. Mindy, any closing thoughts on that question?
I would hand it over to Deirdre for sure on that.
Okay. Okay.
She's the wordsmith.
I know. I just didn't know if you wanted to say anything from that last, but Deirdre, yes, close us out. Take us home. Take us home.
Well, I have capes for everybody. Sioux made me think, and we keep jumping back to the previous question about, why is it safer in art? And Sioux was saying that, actors are saying somebody else's words. The two sisters, people have always asked me, well, who are these characters your sisters? And the two main sisters are a much more attractive and thinner version of me. It's everything that's gone on in my head. I'm sure that was one. I wanted to be, or I have been, a photographer. That's the other. And it's all of the arguments. I am gay and had trouble coming out to my father. And it was the both of them. And it was much safer for me to put it on paper and give it to somebody else and say, here you go, you say it. I didn't have to. And that's the way I write. Even the next screenplay I'm working on, it's just every character, I guess I'm very self-centered. Every character is me to some degree.
Well, write what you know, right?
Right. And I feel much safer that way. These are my masks, I guess.
Well, they are lovely masks. And we just wanted to thank each and every one of you for really taking the time to join us this afternoon and answer questions again. If you didn't hear it at the beginning, one moment, Deirdre O'Connor is the director and screenwriter. Again, my apologies for that blunder in the beginning, but amazing, amazing film. And we look forward to your next submission, Deirdre.
And I will be submitting. Thank you to the Nevada Women's Film Festival. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And to my lovely colleagues here who joined us. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you at the party next year. Whoop, whoop.
In person.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.